People discuss the differences between beta and modern Minecraft a lot nowadays, but they tend to do it in rather fuzzy terms. A lot of talk about nostalgia, feature creep, atmosphere, the minutiae of the older terrain generation, and block textures. And while all that certainly does add up and contribute to some overall aural shift, what blows my mind is how little people talk about the actual gameplay. Yeah, they'll bring up how the Totem of Undying's a little OP, or how the Elytra makes most other modes of transportation redundant in the post-game, but what I'm talking about is how utterly different the most basic facets of Minecraft's gameplay are. From traversal to combat to survival to progression to the fundamental balance and rules of the world itself, almost everything that could have changed has. But was it necessarily better back then? Yes. At least in a few very important ways, I think the gameplay design was much stronger. Minecraft has a reputation for not really being much of a survival game. Some would call it more of a creative platform than a game in the first place. That wasn't always the case necessarily. A dedicated creative mode didn't even exist prior to 1.8, and it was later still that the block palette really started expanding. Rian probably wouldn't have a YouTube channel if we were still stuck with oak wood, cobblestone, smooth stone, and bricks. So then, what are some of the huge sweeping differences that made old Minecraft a spine-tingling survival experience? Well, for starters, food didn't stack before the adventure update. A surprising amount hinges on that actually, because there also used to be no hunger system and no automatic health regen. From beta 1.7.3 back, recovering to full health from your last heart required at least 3 inventory slots, since cooked pork chops healed 4 hearts at a time. It was also only possible to leave 1 pork chop in a furnace, meaning that cooking up multiple was a much more active process, or else at least demanded multiple furnaces and extra fuel to be used up. The single stack slots also meant it was much less convenient to stock up a bulk food supply ahead of time. Every time you left on an expedition, you were carrying a finite amount of effective health with you. Anything past your base 20 hit points took up an inventory slot that could have been used to hold equipment and loot. Granted, there was far less equipment and loot to be had at the time, but there at least was a risk-reward trade-off there. Add to that how much rare food used to be in the first place, and you had what was actually balanced a bit like a survival horror game. In case you need a refresher on that last point, chickens, cows, and sheep used to drop no meat. Leaf blocks didn't have a chance of dropping apples. Zombies didn't drop rotten flesh. Potatoes, carrots, and beetroots didn't exist. Villages, with their farms and hay bales, also didn't exist. Melons didn't exist either, nor did pumpkin pie, cookies weren't craftable, and the only place chests with food spawned were in dungeons, as in the original tiny box buried deep underground dungeons. The second big way the adventure update broke Minecraft was by introducing sprinting. I'm tempted to call it the bigger way, though the implications of near infinite effective health are so far-reaching that I feel this one still takes second place. It's a very close second though, as adding a turbo button to a game built around light jogging also changes a bit more than initially meets the eye. The obvious change, the player's now faster than the monster whose gimmick was being too fast to outrun. On top of that, all the enemies who are already slower than the player are now even more irrelevant. That, as I said, is the obvious part though. What are some other things sprinting allows the player to do? Jump longer gaps than he previously could, thus making it even easier to escape and making general traversal much easier. Prevent a creeper from exploding by leaving its trigger radius or using a sprint and knockback attack. Dodge projectiles such as gassed fireballs far more comfortably. And finally, close the distance to skeletons more quickly and safely. Oh yes, skeletons also stop trying to strafe away in close range at some point. But actual nerfs to enemies, so that could be a whole other topic. More importantly, though, the introduction of sprinting established a damaging trend that's continued to this very day. Mojang doesn't rebalance the game when giving the player new and previously unintended abilities. At best, upgrades will be introduced alongside one very specific enemy that kinda soft counters it. The player can sprint now. Can other enemies sprint? No, but one new optional neutral mob gets to run fast and teleport. The player can now swim with much more grace and speed. Have zombies and skeletons and creepers also had their swimming mechanics overhauled? No, slap in one rare ocean monster that can throw a trident. The player gets a near indestructible 180-degree field of absolute protection that can be crafted before the first night and blocks 100% of all enemy damage, including explosions, as long as you hold right-click. Maybe all the monsters gain new heavy attacks that can't be blocked or have their AI reworked to flank. Nah, just add one enemy that can counter it to the rarest dungeon in the game. Or how about another one of 1.8's big So how did this happen? Was it intentional? Was the game, as they say, dumbed down to appeal to a more casual audience? I don't think so, actually. Minecraft had its peaceful mode more or less from the beginning, and the same update that kicked off this whole balance and apocalypse also added creative mode. A hyper-casual build and focus mode that would have more than made up for any lack of accessibility and survival. Moreover, the game's always featured the ability to switch between difficulty modes on the fly. Like, you can literally just turn off all enemies a second before dying if you want. So I don't believe a casual hardcore split was ever really a priority on Mojang's mind. It's one of a very select handful of products that's actually gotten away with the whole all things to all men approach for the sheer strength of its core concept alone. I also don't think it's laziness. As I already alluded to with my quip on World Gen and Pathfinding, Mojang's not only already done the hard part of making this game, they've done some of the hardest things any studio ever has. If one thing's remained constant throughout Minecraft's entire dev cycle, it's that they're not afraid of challenges. If they were, well, you probably wouldn't be able to make a functional recreation of Pokemon Red inside an unmodified client. And I think those points taken together might actually spell out the problem. A loss of vision and direction's the obvious culprit here, but it's an abnormal case. It's not a Blizzard or Bungie deal where after 20 years all the visionaries leave and the games or franchises lose their souls to feature creep and monetization. The original creator was still on board and in control when the paradigm shifted, but it's like he and his crew just forgot within the space of a couple years how their own mechanics were supposed to work, that major changes require broad rebalances. Or maybe they just didn't care. That's not to say nobody at Mojang's passionate about Minecraft as a project, but I don't think they really care about it as a game per se. It's all about the next big feature, the next great challenge. Taking this award-winning commercial triumph of a technical miracle and piling even more impressive and interesting feats on top. It's about adding things that less so make sense or really build up the game, and more so fill out the world with stuff. Whatever stuff they're feeling at the moment. As strange of a comparison as this is going to sound like, Minecraft feels kind of like an entire Bethesda series done over the span of one game. The more complex Mojang's little world simulator becomes, the less complete the simulation actually feels, and the more people start to wonder, what's it all in service of anyway? How much of an actual game is buried under all this junk in the first place? It ain't a hot take to call Minecraft's development path directionless at this point, but what's criminally overlooked is what a compact and effective survival experience the game used to be. Going back to it recently made me really appreciate not just some vague sense of nostalgia and atmosphere, but how nervous and vulnerable I constantly felt with all these extraneous abilities and features stripped away. The night used to be darker. A pig and a creeper made the same loud, crunching footstep sounds on grass. Skeletons fired their arrows quickly and relentlessly, and I could no longer just hit the turbo button to escape everything on demand. And even if I could, hiding in a little hole until my wounds magically regenerated wasn't an option. With health being more precious and things like shields and enchants not existing, going from noob to leather to iron to diamond felt like genuine milestones. I mean, when was the last time you even crafted leather armor, eh? Despite there being far less content to enjoy, it felt like there was so much more of a game to engage with. All that begs another question though. Is it all lost for good, or is there a way to bring some of that magic back? It's awesome that you can just download and play any previous versions you want straight from the launcher, but legacy builds of games just ain't the same. No matter how good they were or how nostalgic you are, something is lost when they're no longer the community focus. The game state's 100% solved, and you know it'll never change again. And while it's technically good to have them, the more popular they actually are, the worse of a sign that tends to be for your current build. The obvious solution would be just roll back all the adventure mode mechanics, keep all the new blocks and creatures and structures that have been added, but revert hunger, sprinting, possibly enchanting, and either rework or scrap shields. That is just as obviously not gonna happen. It'd be a very hard sell for both the marketeers and all the players who are accustomed to the game as it is now. That's just selling them on the concept. It'd be an even taller order for the developers to take on the full backlog of balance changes they should have been making along the way all at once. Since Minecraft's split across two separate engines now, any change they make is also double duty, so from Mojang's point of view, well, there is no point for them to view. There is one possibility, though. It's not at all likely, but it is the most plausible. A spin-off. I mean, it wouldn't be the first. Minecraft's gotten a bunch of random spin-offs in several unrelated genres over the years, and I find that kinda odd, really. The genre it basically pioneered and has never been challenged in defines it completely, and there's so little storytelling framework to it that every offshoot is needed to make up a basic premise and final villain whole cloth. I have no clue why Mojang expects Minecraft's setting to stand on its own as this epic fantasy world. That's just not the property's strong suit. So why don't we try giving it an offshoot that retains the core concept but expands it in another direction? We'll call this hypothetical spin-off Minecraft Deepstone. And I'm not going to go super in-depth, but here's the basic premise. It essentially started as a Bedrock Engine remake of Beta 1.7.3. Modern QOL features, mainly to do with crafting and building, would be carried over, and to justify its spin-off status, it'd have visuals and combat more on par with Dungeons. Otherwise, though, it'd be more or less the game as you remember it. No hunger, no shields, no sprinting, and also no Dungeons dodge roll, old terrain, old health, old inventory limitations. Whatever, throw in Endermen for marketing too, I don't care. Where the game would really take off, though, is in its Divergent update path. New building blocks and the occasional extra mechanic would be added, but precious time and money wouldn't be wasted on adding new biomes devoid of important features or repping whatever rare animal the leads are interested in this month. Instead, the focus of every major update would be new enemies, new biomes with exclusive new enemies and resources, new weapons and tools that can be crafted with those resources, and finally, the moment of truth, the big name drop, Deepstone. Or more accurately, Deeper and Deeper Stone. Every major content update would increase the depth of the world by another 50 blocks or so. Don't worry, Mojang, I know that'd be hard, but you got this. You can do it. Introducing a new base stone texture, new ores, and stronger, faster, deadlier monsters, even if that mostly meant just buffing old enemies on spawn. Progressively deeper tracks with progressively greater danger that take you progressively further from your base and push your resource management progressively harder to gain progressively better gear and build up a progressively cooler base. That's what I think Minecraft should be all about, but it's far too late for the original game to be all about it. Is there any chance of the spin-off ever happening? The fact we got a Diablo clone, an RTS, and a Telltale game before something like this was even considered to our knowledge has me leaning towards no, probably not. Honestly, the script just felt a bit incomplete, explaining the problem without
Among Us, Among Us. Among Us, Among Us, Among Us.
So this video was meant to come out way sooner, or more accurately, a video on an open world voxel-based survival game was meant to come out way sooner. I had an entire script done about the game Castle Miner Z written up, edited, and cut down, and only when I was near the finish line did I realize that it would have just been half an hour of me waffling about the upsides and downsides of a $3 Minecraft clone on Xbox Live from 2011 while stating the blatantly obvious about why it was made, why it got popular, and why it fell off over time. What I ended up going with, admittedly, isn't the most original topic ever, but it's at least an in-progress discussion that I felt I could add a couple points to. My name's not Yuri of Win, so don't expect me to start making 7-minute videos with 15-minute outros, but I figure worth the extra 30 seconds to keep what few subscribers I have in the loop. That's all for now. Talk at you later, but hopefully a bit sooner.